The seal on the lowest drawer broke under my hand before I had decided to open it, and the cold that came out of it was older than the concordance itself. I had not meant to be the one. 40,000 drawers ran the height of the Cathedral of Records, each one a sealed account, each one indexed, cross-bound, and certified by archivists dead longer than my own species had held the deep arm of the galaxy. My task that watch was small. The Prime Curate had ordered the 11th tier swept for corrosion. I carried a lamp, a brush, a logbook. I was a junior of the 3rd grade, and the work was meant to be dull as stone. The drawer that opened on its own was not on the 11th tier. It was below it, on a tier with no number, in a row I had walked past 100 times without seeing. My lamp caught the spine of a single account case, black as a swallowed star, and across its face in the old certified script that we no longer taught the young, one-word folklore. I should have closed it. The certifications around it had not been renewed in 9,000 years. A wiser archivist would have called the curate, filed a notice, and let some elder with more grade than sense take the risk. But the case had already opened, and a voice came out of it. Not a living voice. The accounts of the concordance keep their own sound. A record sealed with intent will speak its first line aloud to whoever breaks the seal, so that no one opens a thing in ignorance of what it is. The voice was thin, scraped, the voice of an archivist recording her last entry with her hands shaking. If you have opened this, the case said, then the lie we agreed to tell has already failed. Listen, and then decide whether to fail it further. I set down my lamp. The flame did not waver. But my hands did. I am Valor San. I keep the records of the Yoran Concordance, the oldest unbroken archive in the deep arm, 1,100 generations of certified truth. We do not edit, we do not soften. An archivist who alters an account is not punished. He is unmade. His name struck from the index as though he had never been born, which to us is the only death that matters. We are trusted because we cannot lie. That is the whole of our worth. That is why what I found in the black case has kept me from sleep ever since. Because the concordance had lied, once. For 9,000 years, and the case in my hands was the confession. The first line had spoken, but the rest of the account would not unseal until I gave it my certified name and my grade, the way every reader must, so that the index knows who has read what. I almost did not. I knew, the way you know a drop before the storm, that if I read this thing, I would not be able to unread it, and that some accounts are sealed not to protect the truth, but to protect the reader from it. I gave my name anyway. The case warmed in my hands, and the dead archivist began to speak. Her name was Senna or San. My own clan line, 1,100 generations back, the founding archivist of the concordance herself, the one whose certified hand begins our index. We are taught her as a saint. We are taught that she built the archive to hold the truth of the galaxy against the day all other memory failed. We are taught that her first act was to fill the index with everything the young concordance knew. We are not taught that her last act was to take one account out. I have spent my life, she said, keeping true things. I am going to end it keeping one thing untrue, and I want the record of why, so that whoever finds it understands I knew exactly what I was doing. I am about to file the humans under folklore. They are not folklore. I have stood at the edge of their region. I have seen what they left behind, and I have decided the galaxy is safer believing they are a story than knowing they are real. I stopped the playback. I had to. The cathedral was silent, the way only a place built to hold silence can be. The great dark nave rising above me into shadow, the 40,000 drawers breathing their cold. I had read the human entry in our index 1,000 times. Every junior does. It is 2 lines long. It says, humans, a folktale species of the inner dark, recorded in the songs of 9 cultures, never verified, almost certainly a composite of older fears. Cross-reference, monsters, that is all. That is what the founding archivist of the most truthful institution in the galaxy chose to write about a species she had seen with her own eyes. I started the playback again. My grade required it. A junior who opens an account and does not finish it must report the partial reading, and I did not want my name in the index beside the word coward. I will tell it in order, Senna said, because order is the only honesty I have left. The humans came to our attention the way most species do, by their noise. Long before we saw them, we heard them. Not their ships, their signals. The young galaxy is loud with signals, and we logged theirs the way we logged 1,000 others. A faint scatter of patterns from a single blue world in the inner dark, too far to matter, too small to fear. We filed them and moved on. We were wrong to move on. The signals were not the species. The signals were the species learning to speak. And a thing that learns to speak that fast is a thing you should already be afraid of, if you are old enough to know what speed means. The lamp flame leaned, though there was no wind. I have served in the cathedral 9 years, and the flame has never leaned. I tell you this not because it matters to the account, but because it is true. And I am an archivist, and I do not leave out true things, even the ones that frighten me. By the time we sent an expedition to verify them, Senna went on, the humans were no longer a blue world with signals. They had crossed their own dark. They had reached the worlds nearest their own and made them speak as well. In the span between our deciding to look and our arriving to see, they had become a region. Not an empire. We knew empires and we did not fear them. A region. A part of the map that had simply begun to belong to them the way water belongs to the low ground, by nature and not by conquest. My expedition did not find a species to verify. It found a border that had grown up to meet us. I knew then that I should call the curate. This was no longer a junior's account to read alone. This was the founding lie of the concordance, told in the founding voice, and a junior of the third grade had no certification to hold it. I reached for the great bell cord that hangs at the end of every tier, the cord that summons an elder to a reader in distress. My hand stopped on the cord, because Sen or San, 1100 generations dead, said the thing that froze me where I stood. I am going to tell you what we found at the border, she said, and then I am going to tell you why I sealed it, and you are going to want to do what I did. You are going to want to keep the lie. Listen to all of it before you decide, I beg you. The galaxy I saved is the galaxy you're standing in. Do not spend it cheaply. I let go of the cord, I picked up my lamp, and I sat down on the cold stone floor of the 11th tier, below a row with no number, in the oldest archive in the deep arm, to hear the truth the truthful had hidden. Above me, the drawers breathed. Somewhere in the dark, a corrosion beetle ticked against metal, the only living sound in a building made to outlast the living. I have keened over the dead in the proper rites. I have certified the accounts of fallen worlds and slept soundly the same night, because a record honestly kept is a kind of peace. I did not sleep that night. I have not slept well since. The border, Senna said, and her dead voice dropped. The way a living voice drops when it comes to the thing it has been circling was not held. Understand that first. We came expecting a fleet, a line of guard ships, the apparatus a young region throws up to keep strangers out. There was nothing, no pickets, no challenge, no hails. We crossed into the edge of human space the way you walk into an empty hall and find it emptier than it should be. The corrosion beetle stopped ticking. And we were not the first, she said. That was how we learned what they were. We were not the first to come to that border uninvited. We found the others. We found what was left of the ones who had come before us and had not been content to look. I will be exact, Senna said, because exactness is mercy here, and I have no other to give. We found 17 wrecks at the edge of human space, 17 ships of 9 designs from 6 species. Across a span of years we could read in the dust on their hulls. Some were old, some were not. They had come from different directions, in different decades, knowing nothing of each other, and every one of them had stopped at the same line. I leaned toward the case. I could not help it. Not a line we could see, she said. There is no wall there, no field, no marker any instrument of ours could find. But the wrecks drew it for us. Plot 17 ships across 100 years, and they fall along a curve as clean as a drawn arc. And on the far side of that arc there is nothing. No wrecks, no debris. No proof that anyone had ever gone past it and failed, because no one who went past it left anything behind to find. The line was not where the humans stopped intruders. The line was where intruders stopped existing. The lamp leaned again. I steadied it with my hand and felt the warmth of it, and was glad of the warmth because the cold from the open drawer had reached my spine. My navigators wanted to map the curve, Senna said. It is what we do. We are archivists. We make the unknown into a record and the record into a comfort. I let them begin. For 9 days we held station outside the ark and charted the wrecks. And on the 9th day, a junior of my own expedition, younger than you, I think, by the sound of your name, asked the question that ended my certainty. She asked why the wrecks were intact. I did not understand. Senna heard the silence and answered it as though she had known I would not. Think, she said, 17 ships destroyed at a border. If a fleet had killed them, the wrecks would be torn, hulls breached, drives ruptured, the signature of weapons all over them. If a hazard had killed them, a star's flare, a field, a swallowing dark, they would be scattered or scorched or simply gone. But these were whole, sealed, drifting, as though each crew had reached the line and stopped and died of nothing at all and left their ship to keep them. We boarded one. I gave that order myself, and I have regretted it for 9,000 years, and I would give it again, because an archivist who will not open the drawer is no archivist. The corrosion beetle began ticking again, faster now, as if it too were listening. The crew was still aboard, Senna said. All of them, at their stations, not dead of violence. Not dead of cold or vacuum or hunger. The ship had air, had power, had everything a crew needs to live. They had simply stopped, every one of them facing the same direction, facing the line, as though they had all at the same moment seen something across that arc that was worth more than continuing. We found no wounds. We found no message. We found one thing only, and it is the thing I have carried since, the thing that decided me. She paused. The dead pause longer than the living. They have nowhere to hurry to. On the navigation plot of that ship, she said, someone had drawn a new border, by hand, in the crew's own marking ink over the certified chart, the way no navigator of any disciplined service would ever deface an instrument. They had drawn the arc themselves. They had drawn the line that killed them from the inside in their own hand, as if to say, we understand now. We will mark it for the next ones. Do not come past here. And then they had stopped altogether, facing it. I found that I had risen to my feet without deciding to. The cathedral rose black above me. I have stood in that nave at every hour and never felt watched. I felt watched then. That, Senna said, is when I understood what the humans had done. They had not built a wall because a wall can be broken and a broken wall is a challenge. They had built a thing far older and far worse. They had built a place that teaches you to stay out. Every ship that crosses learns the lesson. Not one of them comes back to spread the warning, but they do not need to come back, because they leave the warning where they died, drawn in their own hand, for the next ones to find. The humans do not defend their border. The dead defend it for them. The intruders themselves become the wall. The lamp flame stood straight now, very still, very bright, and I understood that I had been waiting for it to lean and it would not, and somehow that was worse. I gave the order to withdraw, Senna said. Some of my navigators objected. They were archivists. They wanted to go past the arc, to verify, to make the record complete. I told them no. The first time in my service I refused to verify a thing, and one of them, Edron, his name was, I will not strike it. He deserves to be remembered. Edron said to me what you are perhaps thinking now. He said, we cannot leave a hole in the index. We cannot file a thing we have not seen. And I told him the truth, which is that some holes in the index are not ignorance. Some are doors we have the wisdom to leave shut. I sat down again. My legs would not hold the account. We turned back at the arc, Senna said. All but one ship. The Verity under a captain named Loam, the most disciplined verifier I ever served beside. He would not turn. He said the concordance was nothing if it feared a region, that the whole worth of us was that we would go where others would not and bring back the true thing. I could not order a captain of the Verity to stop verifying. It would have been like ordering the sun to stop. I let him go. I have struck that decision from every account but this one. I am telling you here because you should know that the lie I am about to file is not the lie of a coward who never looked. It is the lie of a captain's commander who looked and lost her best ship to the looking and decided that some prices are paid once so they need not be paid again. The beetle had stopped. The cathedral held its breath. I held mine. The Verity crossed the arc, Senna said, at the 11th hour of the 9th day, with a full crew of verifiers and the finest instruments the young concordance possessed. We tracked her as long as our scopes could hold. She did not slow. She did not signal distress. She crossed the line and continued deeper toward the blue world at the heart of the human region, the world where it had all begun. And then our scopes lost her in the inner dark and we waited. She did not say how long. The dead measure time differently. But the next thing she said told me, and it is the thing I have not been able to set down since. 40 days later, Senna said, the Verity came back. I stopped the playback again because a junior who hears a thing too large all at once will mishear it, and an archivist who mishears is worse than no archivist. I needed the rest of the Rex. I needed to understand the arc the way her navigators had tried to. When I let her speak again, Senna had moved on to the charting, and her voice had taken the flat, careful tone of a keeper reporting numbers she does not want to feel. We logged the 17, she said, and then we logged the absences, which is the harder discipline. An archivist learns early that what is missing is also a record. We plotted the Rex along their arc, and then we plotted everything that should have been on the far side and was not. There should have been debris fields. A border that kills draws scavengers, and scavengers leave middens, and middens we can read. There were none. There should have been the Rex of the scavengers themselves, the ones who came to pick the 17 and never left. There were none of those either. The far side of the arc was not a graveyard. A graveyard at least keeps its dead. The far side of the arc kept nothing, and a place that keeps nothing is a place that has decided deliberately to leave no record. And we are the galaxy's record keepers, and we know what it costs to erase one. It costs intent. Someone had been very careful for a very long time to make certain that beyond the line there was nothing for anyone to find. The lamp burned. I had stopped expecting it to lean. I only watched it. My junior, the one who asked why the Rex were whole, kept charting after I told her to stop, Senna said. I do not blame her. The wanting was in her too. She went back over our scope logs of the months before we arrived, looking for any ship that had approached the arc while we watched from a distance. She found three. 3 vessels in the time we held station that had wandered toward the inner dark on their own business, knowing nothing of the Rex or the line. She tracked all 3. 2 of them turned. Not because they saw anything. Our logs show no hail, no warning, no obstacle. They simply altered course, gently, away from the quiet, the way a sleeper turns from a cold draft, and went on about their lives. The third did not turn. The third held its course toward the ark. And on the day it should have crossed, it left our scopes, and 40 days later it drifted back to the line, whole, sealed, silent, and joined the 17. 18 now. We watched a wreck be made. We watched it from the outside, and we saw nothing happen, and that nothing is the loudest thing in this account. I found I was gripping the case so hard my fingers ached. I set it on my knee. That was when I understood the proportion of it, Senna said. 18 wrecks across 100 years is not a war. A war makes more dead than that in an afternoon. 18 wrecks across 100 years is discipline. It is a thing being done slowly, patiently, exactly as much as needed, and not one ship more. The humans were not slaughtering everyone who neared their border. Most who neared it turned, steered by something they could not feel, and lived their whole lives never knowing how close they had come. Only the ones who held their course, who would not turn, who insisted, only those became wrecks. The line did not kill the curious, it killed the stubborn. And it kept exactly enough of them drifting whole along a clean arc to teach the rest of us to turn. 18 teachers, 18 lessons, written in whole hulls, refreshed only as often as some new fool refused the gentle draft and pressed on. It is the most economical horror I have ever charted. They spend almost nothing. They take only the ones who will not be warned, and the ones they take become the warning, and so the cost of the border falls entirely on the ones who test it, and never once on the humans, and never once on the wise. She let that settle. The dead are good at letting things settle. My navigators wanted names for the wrecks, she said. We are archivists. An unnamed thing nags at us. So we read the hulls, the registries, the marks, and we gave the 17, the 18 back their names, 6 species worth of names, and we filed them in a sub-account I have since destroyed because the names were the bait. Do you see it? A wreck with a name is a wreck someone will come looking for. File the 18 by name and registry, and you have written a list of pilgrimages, a map of grief leading straight to the ark, every family and clan in service that lost a ship now knowing where it lies and aching to go and see. I burned the sub-account. I have burned very little in my life. I burned that. The wrecks would stay nameless in my record, drifting and whole and anonymous, so that no one's love would draw them to the line. It was the second small lie. They accumulate. That is how a keeper learns what kind of keeper she is becoming, by counting the lies and finding she can still bear the count. The cathedral was so still I could hear my own hearts. 2 of them, out of time with each other the way they go when I am afraid. Then the verity crossed, Senna said, and everything I have told you so far became the easy part. The wrecks were a horror I could chart. The thing the verity brought home was a horror that charted me. She came back to the ark, Senna said, and stopped at the line, on our side, as though she had been escorted to the door and set down at the threshold, whole, sealed, her drives cold but undamaged. We hailed her for 9 hours and got nothing. So I went across to her myself, in a boarding skiff against the counsel of every officer I had left, because I would not send a junior into a thing I would not enter. The lamp threw my shadow up the wall of drawers, a long, thin archivist climbing into the dark. The Verity's crew was aboard, Senna said, all of them. I had braced for the dead. The word alive went through me worse than any corpse. They were at their stations, she said. They turned to look at me when I came through the lock. They knew me. Captain Loam rose from his chair and gave me the proper salute of a verifier to his commander. And his hand was steady and his eyes were clear, and for one breath I let myself believe the humans were a story after all, that the wrecks had been some hazard we had failed to understand, that my best ship had crossed and verified and come home. Then Loam opened his mouth to make his report, and I learned what the humans do that is worse than killing. The corrosion beetle was silent. It did not tick again for the rest of the account. I have thought since that it had heard enough. He could not tell me what he had seen, Senna said, not would not. I watched a captain of the Verity, a verifier of 40 years, try to render a true report to his commander, the one act that defined his life, and find that the words were gone. Not the words for fear. He could speak of fear. He could speak of the crossing, the inner dark, the blue world growing in his scopes. He could speak right up to the edge of the thing itself, and then his account simply stopped, the way a road stops at a cliff. And on the far side of that stop, there was nothing he could give me but one sentence, the same sentence from every member of that crew, when I asked each of them alone so they could not echo one another. I leaned so close to the case my breath fogged its black face. They said, Senna told me, they let us see so that we would carry the not telling home. The lamp guttered for the first time. I cupped it with both hands. I asked Loam what that meant, Senna said. He wept. A verifier of 40 years wept in front of his commander, not from grief, I think, but from the strain of holding a thing too large for the vessel that held it, and he said, "Commander, they did not stop us. They did not fight us. They opened the inner dark and let us pass all the way to the blue world, and they let us look at what is there. And what is there is not a fleet and not a weapon and not a wall. What is there is the reason the wrecks are whole, and they let us see it, and then they sent us home. Because the worst thing you can do to a galaxy that fears you as a story is to send back the ones who know you are not, unable to say what they know. We are the wall now, Commander. We are the warning that cannot be read. You will look at us for the rest of your lives, and you will see that we came back changed and silent, and you will never know what changed us, and that not knowing will keep you out better than any death." I set the case down on the cold stone. I needed both hands free. I do not know what for. To steady myself, perhaps, to hold the floor down. "I want to tell you what they saw," Senna said, and her dead voice broke for the only time in the account. "I have wanted to tell someone for 9,000 years. I cannot. Not because it is sealed by law, I am the law of this archive, but because Loam and his crew could not give it to me, and I could not pry it from them. And so the thing itself never entered the record, and a thing that never entered the record is a thing I cannot file. It is the one truth the concordance does not hold. The humans made certain of that. They did not let us bring back the fact. They let us bring back the shape of the fact, the silhouette of it, the certain knowledge that there is a fact and that it is large enough to silence a verifier of 40 years, and not one grain of the fact itself. They gave us the fear and kept the knowledge. I have never encountered a crueler discipline. I have never encountered a wiser one. The cathedral was so silent I could hear the drawers cooling. The Verity's crew lived another 30 years, Senna said. I kept them in the concordance, in honor, never in shame. They never crewed a ship again. They could not bear to face the inner dark. Even the certified dark of the archive made them flinch. They aged faster than they should have, the way a thing carrying too great a weight wears through early. And to the day each of them died, none could finish the report. I sat with the last of them, a navigator named Esh, at her ending. I asked her gently, as a friend and not a commander, whether she remembered the blue world. She said she remembered it perfectly. I asked her to describe it. She smiled. I will never forget that she smiled. And she said, "I would, Senna. I have wanted to for 30 years, but every time I reach for it, I understand again why I shouldn't, and I love you too much to make you carry it." And she died with the knowing still inside her, and it died with her, and the index has a hole in it the exact size and shape of the human truth. I understood then why the case had spoken its warning. You are going to want to keep the lie. I wanted to keep it. Sitting on that cold floor, I wanted to seal the black case and slide it back into the row with no number and walk up 11 tiers into my dull, small life and never speak of it, because Senna Orsan, who could not lie, had decided the galaxy was better off not knowing, and who was I, a junior of the third grade, to overrule the founding archivist of the concordance? But she was not finished. The dead are patient, and they save the heaviest thing for last. I sealed the human entry under folklore, Senna said, the night after Esh died. I wrote the 2 lines you have surely read. A folktale species, never verified, a composite of older fears, and I certified them with my own hand, knowing they were the only false certification in the history of this archive, and knowing that the falseness would damn my name if it were ever found. I did it because a truth that cannot be told is worse than a lie that can. If I filed the humans as real but unknowable, every reader for 1,000 generations would do what Loam did. They would go to verify. They would cross the arc to fill the hole in the index, because that is what we are, and the humans would send them home silent, one expedition at a time, forever, each crew a fresh wound the galaxy could not stop pressing. So I closed the wound. I made the humans a story no one verifies, a story that keeps the curious home. I built the only quarantine that holds against my own kind. I made the truth too small to chase. The lamp burned steady. I did not move. And now you have opened it, Senna said, which means the seal failed, or you were meant to find it, or chance did what I spent my life preventing. So I will tell you the last thing, the thing I could not put in the 2 lines, the thing that is the whole reason for the lie, and then you will decide, as I decided, whether to be the archivist who keeps the galaxy safe or the archivist who keeps the galaxy informed. You cannot be both. I tried. I failed. Listen. I asked the case a question, though it could not hear me. I asked it aloud, alone on the cold floor. Did none of them break the silence? In 30 years, did not one of the Verity's crew, in fever or in drink or in love or at the last extremity of dying, let slip a single grain of what they had seen? The case did not answer me. But Senna had anticipated the question 9,000 years before I asked it, the way the wise anticipate the wanting in those who come after, and her next words answered it as though she had heard. I watched for it, she said. Understand that I was not only their commander. I was an archivist who had a hole in her index the exact shape of the human truth, and I wanted that hole filled the way you want to breathe. So I watched the Verity's crew for 30 years, gently, lovingly, the way you watch a sealed account you are forbidden to open but cannot stop. Standing near, I gave them quiet posts. I gave them honor, and I listened. I told myself it was care. It was care, it was also hunger. A keeper learns the two are not always different. The lamp burned steady. I did not move. There were 11 of them who came home, Senna said. I will tell you what became of each because they earned a record, and because their not telling is itself the account. Captain Loam I have spoken of. He took a post tending the outer beacons, the loneliest work in the service, and he did it well for 20 years. And the one time I visited him there, he said, before I could ask, I still cannot, Commander. Do not make the trip again to find out. I did not. He died at his beacon, alone by choice, and the keepers who recovered him found his log, full and faithful for 20 years, every entry true, and not one word in any of them about the inner dark. I closed my eyes and let her give me the dead. Esh I have told you of, she said. She smiled. Then there was Varon, the engineer, who could explain the working of any drive in the fleet and went mute as stone the moment the talk turned to the crossing, not unwilling mute, his jaw working and nothing coming. Oh, the signals officer, who took to writing, he filled ledgers. I read them after he died, hoping. They were beautiful and they were about everything in the galaxy except the one thing, circling it, page after page the way water circles a drain it will not enter. Dello and Severin, the two scouts, who could not be in the same room as a star chart again and resigned the service to keep bees on a quiet moon, and kept them well, and never spoke of why a scout would flee the stars. The twins, Ance and Ipa, who finished each other's sentences their whole lives, except when the sentence neared the crossing, and then they would both stop at the same word, the same heartbeat, and look at each other, and change the subject as one. The cook Beru, who fed the crew on the way out and the way back and said only once late, to a friend who reported it to me, the water tasted the same coming home. I have thought about that more than is healthy. Everything tasted the same. We were the only thing that changed, and the navigator's mate, Tull, the youngest, who lived the longest, 60 years past the crossing, and on his deathbed, I went to him as I had gone to Esh, and I asked. And he said the thing that closed the matter for me forever. The corrosion beetle did not tick. The cathedral held. He said, Senna told me, Commander, I have spent 60 years deciding whether to tell you because I love the concordance and I think the concordance should hold all true things. And I have decided not to, and I want you to know it is a decision and not an inability so that you do not think the humans broke us. They did not break us. They taught us. There is a difference, and the difference is everything. A broken man cannot speak. We can speak. We choose not to, every day freshly, for 60 years, because we understand the cost of speaking, and you do not, and we will not buy your understanding with the lives that would come after. They did not take our voices, Commander. They gave us a reason to keep them, and the reason is so good that not one of us, in 60 years in fever or in love or at the last, has ever once been tempted past it. That is what is on the other side of the line, not a monster, a reason. A reason so complete that 11 proud verifiers carried it to 11 graves, rather than set it down where it might be picked up by someone who would die learning it. I had to stand. I walked the length of the 11th tier in the dark, past the drawers, my lamp throwing the shadows of 9,000 years across the stone. And I understood that I had become the next one tempted, and that everything Tull described was happening to me in reverse. I had been given the reason, or the shape of it, and now I would have to decide, freshly every day, whether to keep it. That is the wall, Senna said behind me, her voice following me down the tier. Not the Rex, not the line. The reason. The humans found the one thing that holds against a curious galaxy forever. They made the silence reasonable. A forced silence breaks. Someone always talks. But a chosen silence, a silence that the wisest among us keep because they have waited and found it just. That silence holds for 9,000 years and will hold for 9,000 more. Because every keeper who inherits it inherits the reason with it, and the reason is sound. They did not have to make us obey, they made us agree. There was one more thing the Verity brought back, Senna said. I have not mentioned it because I have been telling you in order, and order required that I keep it for the end, the way Loam kept it for me. I had thought I had no fear left to give. I was wrong. When the crew came aboard my command ship, she said, they brought nothing. We searched them gently for anything the inner dark might have set upon them. They carried no object, no sample, no instrument record. The humans had let them keep their lives and their flinching silence and nothing else. Except Esh, the navigator, the one who smiled at her ending, had something in her hand when she came through the lock. She did not know she had it. She opened her hand when I asked and looked at it as though it had appeared there, and it had not been aboard the Verity when she crossed the ark. The lamp threw its small, steady light. I did not breathe. It was a marker, Senna said, a navigator's marking stylus of human make, worn, old. The kind of tool a working navigator carries for a lifetime and wears to the shape of his own hand. It was not new. It had belonged to someone. And on its side, scratched in the human script we had only begun to learn, was a single line. It took my linguists 3 years to render it, and when they did, I sealed the rendering inside this case and nowhere else. And I struck the marker itself into the deepest vault under a name no index lists. Do you want to know what the line said? You have come this far. You will not stop wanting to know if I stop here. I have learned that the worst thing is the not knowing, and I will not do to you what they did to Esh, I will tell you.
I said yes.
I said it aloud, alone, to a dead voice in a black case. In the silence of the oldest archive in the deep arm, my own voice frightened me. The marker said, Senna told me, for the next one who comes to draw a line. Ours is already drawn. Use this to mark yours and stay behind it and live. I sat with that for a long time. The lamp burned. The drawers cooled. The cathedral kept its silence, which I now understood was not the silence of a building but the silence of a discipline. 1,100 generations of archivists who had walked past the row with no number and never asked why one drawer was colder than the rest. They are not what the songs say, Senna said. The songs that gave us the word folklore made them monsters, devourers, a hunger in the dark. That is not it. A monster you can fight or flee or appease. The humans are something the young galaxy has no word for, which is why I gave them the only word that would keep my kind away. Children's word, a word for things that are not real. They are not a hunger. They are a teacher. They do not want the galaxy dead. They want the galaxy out. And they have found the one method that works on every species that has ever come to their border, the proud and the curious and the desperate alike. They let you live and they take the telling. They send you home as a closed door. Every survivor of human space is a wall the humans did not have to build. We do their work for them. We avoid the blue world because the ones who reached it came back unable to say why we should. And there is no fear in all the galaxy older or deeper than the fear of a thing your wisest cannot describe. The lamp leaned at last toward the open drawer, as though it too wished to go and look. You will want to verify this, Senna said. Of course you will. You are of my clan line. The wanting is in your blood. You will think, the founding archivist was old, was frightened, was perhaps deceived. You will think, I will take a single quiet ship to the Ark and see the wrecks for myself, and I will be careful. I will not cross. I will only look. Hear me. Edrin thought that. Loam thought that. Every commander who ever stood at that Ark thought, I will only look. And looking is the first half of crossing. The Ark does not need you to cross. It needs you to come close enough to want to. The wrecks are not a warning the humans posted. They are bait the galaxy posts for itself, each ship drawing the next, each curiosity feeding the next, and the humans have only to leave the door open and let our own nature carry us through it. I sealed the entry so that no one would come close enough to want to. That is the whole of the lie. It is not a lie to protect the humans. It is a lie to protect us from ourselves. I closed my eyes. I am an archivist. I have built my whole short life on the certainty that a true record kept is a sacred thing and a false one a desecration, and here was the founding voice of my order telling me that the most sacred act in our history was a forgery, kept holy by the silence around it. And now the choice, Senna said. You can do what I did. You can reseal the case and renew the certification, and let the humans stay a children's tale for another 9,000 years, and the galaxy will go on avoiding a thing it does not know it is avoiding, safe in its ignorance, alive in its ignorance. Or you can take this account to the curate and unseal the truth, and restore the human entry to what it should be, real, verified, unknowable, and watch what happens. The concordance is not what it was in my day. It is larger, prouder. There are 100 captains of the Verity Spirit on 100 ships, and the day they learn that human space is real, and that the truth of it is being kept from them, they will not rest. They will go. One by one, fleet by fleet, they will go to the Ark to fill the hole in the index, and the humans will send them home silent, and the galaxy will tear itself apart trying to learn a thing it was built unable to bear. You will not have informed the galaxy. You will have fed it to the door. The dead voice softened, the way a thing softens when it comes to its true end. I do not know which is right, Senna said. I want you to understand that. I am not a saint who solved it. I am an old archivist who made a terrible choice and lived with it, and could not be sure to the last hour of my life that it was the lesser terror. I sealed this account to instruct you but to share the weight, so that whoever inherits the lie inherits also the reason for it, and is not alone with it as I was alone. That is the only gift I have for you, the weight and the reason, and the company of one who carried it first. Decide, and know that I will be in the index either way, beside my false certification, waiting to learn from the next reader whether I was a coward or a keeper. I have waited 9,000 years. I can wait for you. The account ended. The black case went cold and silent in my hands. I sat with the cold case a long while before I could move. The cathedral did not hurry me. It has held longer silences than mine. When I finally rose, I did not go up. I went down one tier further, to the certified concordances of the founding age, the accounts I had read as a junior and thought I understood, and I read them again with the new knowledge in me. And they were different accounts now. The way a face is different once you have seen it weep. There in the founding age record was the expedition Senna had led, logged, certified, complete. It said the concordance had sent a survey to the inner dark and found the region unremarkable, sparse, not worth the charting, and recommended no further expeditions for reasons of economy. It was signed in her hand. I had read it 100 times and taken it for what it claimed to be, a dull negative result, the kind that fills half our archive. Now I saw it for what it was. The public face of the lie, the surface account written to be read, hiding the black case 11 tiers below it. Senna had not only sealed the truth, she had built a false dullness over it, a certified boredom, so that no reader would ever feel a pull toward the inner dark, because there is nothing in all the archive less tempting than a region officially declared not worth the trip. The cracks were whole to teach the stubborn. The dull account was written to bore the rest. 2 walls, one of horror and one of tedium, and the tedium was the cleverer of the two, because no one ever crossed a border to verify that it was boring. I found other accounts that span shifted under my new eyes. A founding age note recommending the concordance's growth turned toward the bright arm, away from the deep, citing richer worlds and easier charts. Signed by Senna, dated the year after Esch died. A revision to the Academy's first navigation curriculum, removing the inner dark from the worlds a young navigator was taught to find interesting. Her hand again. She had not only hidden the humans, she had bent the whole young concordance away from them, gently at its root, in the years when its habits were still soft enough to set. Every navigator trained in the 9,000 years since had been taught, without knowing it, to find the deep arm dull. The flinch I had felt looking at the quiet was not instinct and not the line. It was Senna, reaching up through 90 centuries of curriculum to turn my eyes the way she had turned her own captains, the way I would one day turn captains of my own. I understood then that the keeping was older and deeper than one sealed case. The case was only the confession. The keeping was woven through the whole archive, through the curriculum, through the very shape of what the concordance found worth knowing, so thoroughly that no single reader could ever find it all, because it was not hidden in one drawer. It was hidden in the grain of everything, in the 1,000 small certified dullnesses that together made a galaxy steer wide of a starless dark and never ask why. I climbed back to the row with no number. I held the black case, and I knew that whatever I decided, I was not deciding alone, and I was not deciding first. I was the latest reader of a thing that had been read by exactly the right number of keepers, and not one more, each of them turned by the case the way captains were turned by the line, each of them choosing the silence freshly and finding the reason sound. The case did not command, it persuaded, and it had never once failed to persuade in 9,000 years because it was built by the most truthful archivist who ever lived, out of the only lie she ever told for the only reason that could justify it. That was when I decided to take it to the curate, not to overrule the keeping, I understood now, but to find out whether I was meant to inherit it. A junior does not seal the founding lie of the concordance on his own grade. I needed to know whether there was already a keeper, and there was. There always had been. I simply had not yet been told. I did not reseal it that night. I could not. I carried the case up 11 tiers to my cell, against every rule of the archive, and I lay awake with it on my breast like a stone, and somewhere near the cold hours I made the only decision I was capable of, which was to verify nothing and to tell one person. The prime curate was named Hollis Vane, and she was the oldest living thing in the cathedral, 300 years in the records, her certified hand on a quarter of the index. I had served under her 9 years and exchanged perhaps 9 sentences with her. She terrified me before I knew what I now knew. I went to her chamber at the turn of the watch before the junior bells, and I set the black case on her table without a word, because I had no words that would not break. She looked at the case, she looked at me, and she did a thing that stopped my hearts. She did not ask what it was. She closed her eyes, and her shoulders fell, and she said, "So it has found a reader at last. I had begun to hope I would die before it did." She knew. Every prime curate knows, Hollis said. It is the one account passed not in the index but in the ear, curate to curate, on the deathbed of the old to the trembling hand of the new. We are told where the row with no number is. We are told never to open the case, because to open it is to read it, and to read it is to inherit the choice, and a curate who inherits the choice cannot govern an archive in peace. We are told only this. There is a drawer that is colder than the rest, and in it is the reason the concordance is alive. And you are to renew its seal once a generation and never look inside, and warn your successor to do the same. I have renewed that seal 11 times. I have never opened it, and now a junior of the 3rd grade has done what no curate dared, and the choice that has slept for 9,000 years is awake in this room. I told her everything the case had told me. She listened the way the very old listen, without surprise, with only a deepening of the lines around her eyes. When I finished, she was quiet a long while. "You want me to decide," she said at last. "You came to me so the weight would not be yours. I understand it. Senna did the same. She sealed the account so the weight would be shared, and you have shared it with me, and I am tempted to share it with the council. And the council would share it with the captains, and so the weight would travel outward until it became a wave, and the wave would break against the ark, and the humans would send back a fleet of silent men. That is how a kept thing becomes a catastrophe. Not by malice, by the simple human, forgive me, by the simple living urge to not carry a thing alone." She rose and went to the window of her chamber, which looks out from the height of the cathedral over the dark plain where our world keeps its night. I had never seen the prime curate look small. She looked small then. "Let me tell you what I have learned in 300 years of keeping records," Hollis said. "The galaxy does not avoid human space because of a wall or a fleet or a law of the council. I have read the avoidance accounts. There are thousands. A navigator who plots a course and finds his hand drifting the line away from the inner dark and cannot say why. A captain who orders a survey of the unexplored arm and stops, every time just short of the Blue World's region, and tells himself he will return to it next year and never does. A whole council that has, in 1100 generations, never once formally discussed the human region, not avoided the discussion, simply never had it, as though the topic itself sits in a blind spot of the collective eye. I used to think this was instinct. Senna's account tells me what it truly is. It is the silence working. The survivors came home unable to speak, and their not speaking spread, generation to generation, until the whole galaxy inherited a flinch it cannot trace. We do not avoid the humans because we remember them. We avoid them because we have forgotten them so completely that the place where the memory should be has become a thing we steer around. The hole in the index is in all of us. Senna only put it on paper. The night sky beyond her window held no stars near the inner dark. I had never noticed. I noticed then. There is a region of our sky, low toward the deep arm, where the stars thin and the dark is darker, and no astronomer of the concordance has ever charted it close, and every child is told it is empty, and no child ever asks why empty dark should have a name. We call it the quiet. I had said the word 1,000 times. I had never once wondered what it meant. "I will not take it to the council," Hollis said. "I want you to hear my reason, because you will be curate one day. Yes, you, the only living junior who has read the account. The line of keeping passes to the one who knows, and you will face this choice again when I am in the index, and I want you to face it with my reason, and Senna's both, and add your own, and decide better than either of us if you can." She turned from the window. "I will not unseal it," she said, "because the truth would not make the galaxy wiser. It would make the galaxy curious. And the humans have built a thing that turns curiosity into silence, and silence into avoidance, and avoidance into peace. To break the seal would be to feed the proud and the brave and the brilliant into a door that takes their voices and sends them home as warnings. And we would call it knowledge, and we would do it again and again because we cannot bear a hole in the index, and the hole is the whole point. The humans do not need to defend their border while we are willing to defend it for them with our own dead. The only way to refuse them that service is to never go, and the only way to never go is to not want to. And the only way to not want to is to believe there is nothing there." Senna was right. The lie is the kindness. The lie is the wall. "I will renew the seal, and I will teach you the row with no number, and you will renew it after me, and we will keep the galaxy alive by keeping it ignorant, and we will carry the knowing alone, because that is the price of the door staying shut." I asked her the question that had been growing in me since the case first spoke. I asked, how is that different from what they did to Esh? How are we any better than the humans if we too keep the telling, if we too send our own kind away unable to know? She did not flinch. She had clearly asked it of herself many times in the long watches. "We are not better," she said. "We are the same instrument, turned to the same purpose, by their design. That is the cruelest part of it, and the part Senna could not say even to herself. The humans did not only make a wall of the dead, they made a wall of the living too. They made the archivists of the galaxy into the keepers of their quarantine. We think the seal is ours. We think the choice is ours. But we are doing exactly what the marker asked, drawing our own line and staying behind it. We are the next ones who came to draw a line." Senna found the stylus in Esh's hand, and she used it. She drew the line on paper instead of space. She marked our border in the index, and stayed behind it and lived and taught us all to live behind it without knowing it was there. The humans never had to reach our world at all. They reached one ship once and let it carry the marker home, and the marker did the rest. We have been their cartographers for 9,000 years and called it our own wisdom. I would have resealed the case that day and lived the rest of my life behind the line Hollis had drawn for me. But the choice did not wait for my courage to settle. The choice came up the cathedral stair 3 days later, in the form of a survey notice, and forced my hand before I had finished growing the hand to be forced. The notice came across the concordance's open index, the way all expedition filings do, certified and routine, a captain registering a course so the archive would have it. I would not have read it twice but for the heading, a survey of the deep arm, the unexplored remainder. And in the course plot, drawn clean and confident by a navigator who did not know what I knew, an arc that bent toward the quiet and did not bend away. The captain's name was Maren Voss. She was young for a command and brilliant by every record attached to her file, and she had filed her survey for the one region of the deep arm that the concordance had never charted close, and she had written, in the certified remarks where a captain states her purpose, a single line that stopped my hearts. There is a hole in the index here. I intend to fill it. I took the notice to Hollis. I did not have to explain it. She read the heading and the course and the remark, and she set it down with the slow care of someone setting down a thing that might break, and she said so. It begins the way it always begins, not with malice, with diligence, the best of us doing the best work straight toward the door. She does not know, I said. None of them ever know, Hollis said. That is the design. If she knew, she would be afraid, and fear can be reasoned with. She does not know, so she is not afraid. She is curious, and curiosity in a brilliant captain is the one current the line cannot turn on its own. The gentle draft turns the idle. It does not turn the diligent. Voss will hold her course straight into the quiet because to her it is only empty dark with a name, and an empty dark with a name is exactly the kind of small wrong thing a great captain spends her life setting. Right, she will go to fill the hole, and the hole will fill her. I asked the question a keeper must ask, the question that is the whole of our usefulness. I asked, what do we do? Hollis looked at me a long while. Now you learn the rest of the keeping, she said. Senna sealed the truth. But sealing the truth is only half the work and the easy half. The hard half is what we do when a Maren Voss files a course straight at the line, and we cannot tell her why she must not go, because telling her why is the very thing that would send 1,000 more after her. We cannot warn her with the truth. So we turn her with the lie, quietly, cleanly, the way the line itself turns the idle, a gentle draft she will never trace. We have done it 10,000 times. The avoidance accounts I told you of, the captains who stopped just short and told themselves they would return next year. Do you imagine that flinch is always the line's doing? Half of it is ours. The line turns whom it can. The keepers turn the rest. We are the part of the wall that handles the diligent. She rose and went to her index and drew a thread of accounts I had never been permitted to. See, sealed curate grade, generations of them, reroutings. A survey quietly deprioritized in favor of a more urgent one the curate of the day had invented. A navigator's certification renewal delayed just long enough to scrub a planned course. A research grant redirected. A rumor of a hazard in the deep arm seeded carefully into the right ears, true enough in its bones to hold. 9,000 years of keepers gently, lovingly, relentlessly steering their own kind away from the quiet, and not one captain in all that time ever knowing he had been turned. This is the work, Hollis said. Not the dramatic choice you imagine, the council and the unsealing and the great revelation. The work is small and constant, and it never ends. The work is making sure Maren Voss, who is better than either of us, files a different survey next quarter and forgets she ever wanted this one. We will give her a reason, a good reason, a true seeming reason, a reason she will adopt as her own and defend to others. And she will live, and her crew will live, and she will never know that 2 old archivists in a stone tower spent a careful month bending her brilliant course a few degrees away from a door. I felt sick, I said. It is what they did to the Verity. We are doing it to her. We are taking her knowing before she can have it. Yes, Hall said without flinching, for she never flinched. We are. I told you we are the same instrument. Now you see it in your hands and not in the abstract. This is the price, Vale. Not the false certification that is only ink, this. Turning a great captain from the truth she has every right to chase, because the chasing would kill her and 1,000 after her, and there is no way to tell her so that would not also kill them. We rob her of one true thing to save her life and many lives. We do it gently. We do it well. And we carry the knowing that we did it, alone the way Senna carried hers. Now help me draft the reroute. You will do most of it in the years ahead. You may as well learn on one you will remember. We drafted it over a month, the way the keeping is always done, slowly, so that nothing looks like a hand. We did not forbid Maren Voss anything. To forbid is to mark the forbidden thing precious, and a precious thing draws the brave. Instead, we made the deep arm dull. A second survey was certified urgent. An anomaly in a near sector that wanted a captain of exactly her brilliance, filed in such a way that it would reach her as an honor and a chance, and a thing only she could do. Her grant for the deep arm was not refused. It was simply not the most interesting thing on her table by the time we were done. We seeded, through 3 intermediaries who never knew they were carrying it, the entirely true observation that the quiet had been surveyed at long range 9 times and returned nothing each time, that it was the kind of empty that wasted careers, that a captain who wanted to be remembered should spend herself where there was something to find. It was all true. That is the keeper's craft, and its horror. We never lied to Marin Voss. We only arranged the truth so that the dull truth stood in front of the deadly one, and let her brilliant mind do the rest, choosing freely as she believed. The survey that would make her name instead of the one that would end it. She withdrew the deep arm filing in the 11th week. She did not announce it. She simply filed the near sector survey instead, and her certified remarks for it began. There is better work here than I thought, and I read that line in the open index and had to leave Hollis's chamber and stand at the window over the dark plain for a long while, because I had written the better work into her path with my own hand, and she had thanked the galaxy for it, and she would never know. She will have a long career, Hollis said when I came back. A great one, I think. She will fill 100 holes in the index, real ones, holes that wanted filling. She will be honored. She will train captains of her own and teach them to chase the empty places, and we will watch those captains too, and turn the ones who turn toward the quiet, gently, one at a time forever. That is the shape of it. We do not save the galaxy once. We save it every quarter, captain by captain, course by course. And we are never thanked, and we can never be thanked. Because to be thanked we would have to be known, and to be known we would have to tell, and telling is the one thing the keeping forbids. I asked her how many. How many Marin Vossas across 9,000 years? I do not know, Hollis said. The accounts are not complete. We destroy what we can, the way Senna destroyed the names of the wrecks, so that the keeping leaves as little trace as the line. But I have read enough to tell you it is not rare. It is constant. Every generation produces its captains who feel the hole in the index and ache to fill it. And every generation the keepers turn them, and most are turned by the gentle draft and never come near our hands at all. And some are turned by our hands and never feel them, and a very few in 9,000 years, are turned by nothing, and hold their course, become the next whole wreck drifting along the arc, refreshing the lesson for the rest. We do not catch them all. We were never meant to. The wrecks are the keeping's failures, kept whole by the humans so that even our failures serve the wall. There is no waste in it anywhere. That is what I cannot forgive and cannot stop admiring. They built a thing in which even the ones we fail to save become part of the saving. The lamp in her chamber burned low. The quiet hung in the dark beyond her window, starless, named, avoided, and I understood at last that I was looking at the most successful structure in the history of the galaxy, and that it had no walls and no guards and no fleet, and had never once spoken, and that I had just spent a month serving it without being asked, the way my whole order had served it for 9,000 years, the way my whole galaxy served it every time a navigator's hand drifted from the deep arm, and he never wondered why. I should have left it there. A wiser junior would have. Hollis had decided, and her decision was Senna's, and 2 of the wisest keepers the Concordance ever raised had looked at the same abyss and chosen the same silence, and I was a junior of the 3rd grade with corrosion on my brush. But I am of Senna's clan line, and the wanting is in my blood, and I had to know one thing more before I could reseal the case for the rest of my life. I had to know whether the marker was still in the deepest vault, whether the proof was real, not to verify the humans. I believed in them now the way you believe in cold, by feeling it, but to verify her. To know that the founding archivist had not built 9,000 years of lie on a frightened dream. Hollis read it in my face. The very old read everything. You want to see the stylus, she said. Of course. Verification is the disease of our order. Senna named it herself. I will let you see it. Once. And then you will understand why I have never asked to, in 300 years, and you will reseal the case with me, and we will speak of this no more while I live. She took me down, past the 11th tier, past the row with no number, down a stair I had never seen. Behind a door her certified hand opened, and mine never could, into a vault that held 1 drawer. The cold there was not the cold of stone. It was the cold of a thing that does not want to be remembered. She drew the drawer. Inside, on black cloth, lay the marker. It was small, worn, as she had said, to the shape of a hand that was not a hand like ours. 2 few fingers, the wear pattern wrong for our grip, made for a creature that held its tools differently than we hold ours. That detail undid me more than anything the case had said. Not a monster's claw, not a god's instrument. A working tool worn smooth by a working life, by someone who had carried it for years and used it to mark charts and never once imagined it would end here. The single physical proof of human space in the oldest archive in the galaxy, in a vault that holds nothing else because nothing else is needed. And the line scratched in its side, in the human script I had been taught only enough of to certify it real. For the next one who comes to draw a line, ours is already drawn. Use this to mark yours and stay behind it and live. I understood Hollis then. I understood Senna. There is no arguing with a working tool, a weapon you can defy, a threat you can answer. But a tired old marker, worn to the shape of a stranger's hand, asking you, almost kindly, to draw your own line and stay behind it and live, is a thing against which courage has no purchase. The humans had not threatened us, they had advised us. And the advice was so plainly, terribly good that 9,000 years of the proudest record keepers in the deep arm had taken it without ever knowing they had. They did not hate the ones who came, I said. It was not a question. The marker made it impossible to think otherwise. No, Hollis said. I think that is the worst of it. A hateful thing you can resist out of pride. But the ones who built this border did not hate the 17 Rex, or the Verity, or us. They pitied us. They looked at a young galaxy full of proud, curious species rushing toward a thing they could not survive, knowing, and they did the one merciful thing a power can do for a child it cannot teach in time. They made the child afraid of the stove without ever letting it touch the burn. They took one ship, gave it the silence and the marker, and sent it home to teach the rest of us to stay in the yard. The marker does not say keep out. It says stay behind it and live, live. Of all the words to scratch on the proof of a forbidden region, they chose live. They are not our wall. They are our wardens, and they have never once spoken to us, and we have obeyed them perfectly, and we have called the obedience our own good sense. She closed the drawer. The cold receded a little, the way a held breath releases. Now you have seen it, she said. Now you carry what I carry and what Senna carried, and what every curate has carried in the ear, without ever daring to open the case and learn the why of it. You are the first in 9,000 years to know the whole of it, the account, the proof, and the choice, and not be able to set it down. I am sorry, I would have spared you. The seal was meant to spare you. But the archive chose you, or chance did, and the keeping passes to the one who knows. We went back up. At the row with no number, she gave me the case and the certification stylus and bade me renew the seal with my own hand so that my name would stand on it beside Senna's, the second false certification in 1,100 generations, and the last for a long time, I hope. I held the health stylus over the case for a long while. I thought of the verifiers I would betray, the bright, proud captains who would never know there was a truth being kept from them, who would feel the old flinch steer their charts away from the quiet, and never learn it was a hand on their wrist. I thought of the galaxy living its whole life inside a lie, safe, alive, ignorant. I thought of Esh, smiling at her ending, loving her commander too much to make her carry it, and I drew the line. I certified the human entry as folklore a second time, 9,000 years after the first, with my own true name on a false truth, and I felt the unmaking I deserve waiting somewhere far off, patient as the dark, and I did it anyway, because Hollis was right, and Senna was right, and the marker was right, and there are some holes in the index that are not ignorance but mercy. And some doors a keeper shuts not to hide what is behind them, but to spare the ones who would die learning. I will tell you one more thing before I seal this, because Senna told me one more thing, and a keeper passes on the whole weight or none of it. In my 4th year as prime curate, the keeping failed, not through my carelessness. I had grown careful in a way I am not proud of, the way you grow careful around a sleeping thing. It failed the way Hollis said it always eventually fails. A captain held her course, and nothing turned her, not the draft, not our hands. Her name was Chorus Aldane, and she was not brilliant the way Marin Voss was brilliant. She was stubborn, which is worse. We tried the dull truth, and she found it interesting. We tried the urgent diversion, and she delegated it. We tried the seeded rumor of a hazard in the deep arm, and she filed an amended course that went toward the hazard because she was the kind of captain who runs at the thing others run from. And I realized too late that every tool the keeping owns is a tool for turning the curious, and Chorus Aldane was not curious. She was defiant. There is no draft that turns defiance. There never has been. That is why there are wrecks. I could have stopped her. I want you to know that I waited. I am the prime curate. I could have had her certification pulled, her command revoked, her course forbidden by the open authority of the archive. And I did not, and I will tell you why, because it is the hardest thing I know, and you will face it too. To forbid her by name in the open index, citing the quiet, that would have done in one stroke what 9,000 years of keeping prevented. It would have marked the quiet as a thing the concordance forbids. And the moment the galaxy learns there is a place its oldest archive forbids, Every Chorus Aldane in the deep arm files a course for it. I could save one captain by forbidding her, and lose 1,000 to the forbidding. So I let her go. I sat in Hollis's chamber in the chair Hollis died in, and I watched the open index, and I let a good stubborn captain take her crew toward the line, because saving her would have unmade the wall that saves the rest. She crossed into the quiet on a day I will not forget. Our long-range scopes held her as long as they could, the way Senna's held the Verity, and she did not slow, and she did not signal, and the dark took her. I did not sleep that span. I sat with the case in my lap, Senna's case, and I waited the way she waited, and I understood her at last all the way to the bottom, because the waiting is the worst of the keeping, worse than the lie, worse than the turning, the waiting to learn what kind of return your failure earns. Chorus Aldane came back in 31 days. She stopped at the line, on our side, whole and sealed and silent, exactly as the Verity had 9,000 years before. We hailed her for a day and got nothing, and then I did the thing no curate had done since Senna. I went across myself in a skiff against the counsel of everyone, because I would not send a junior into a thing I would not enter, and because I had to know whether the account I had certified twice with my own false hand was still true. It was still true. Her crew was aboard, alive, at their stations. They turned to look at me when I came through the lock, and they knew me, and Chorus Aldane rose and gave me the proper salute, and her hand was steady and her eyes were clear, and when I asked her, alone, to tell me what she had seen, she opened her mouth to make her report, and the words were gone. Not the words for fear, the words for the thing, and she wept. A stubborn captain weeping not from grief, but from the strain of holding a thing too large for the vessel that held it. And she said the sentence I had read in Senna's account and prayed I would never hear with living ears. They let us see, she said, so that we would carry the not-telling home. I brought them back, all of them. I gave them quiet posts and honor, and never shame the way Senna did, and I watched them the way she watched, with care that is also hunger, and not one of them has ever told me, and not one of them ever will. Chorus Aldane tends the outer beacons now. She is content there, in the way the silent are content. And in her hand, when she came through the lock, she carried a marker, worn old, shaped for a hand that is not a hand like ours. She did not know she held it, and scratched in its side, in the human script, 3 years for my linguist to render. For the next one who comes to draw a line, ours is already drawn. Use this to mark yours, and stay behind it and live. The same words, 9,000 years apart. The same tired marker or its twin, pressed into the hand of the next one, stubborn enough to need it. They have not forgotten us. They have not changed their answer. They have not so much as raised their voice in 90 centuries. They simply keep one ship, when one ship insists, and send it home a closed door, and let the door teach the rest of us, exactly as much as needed and not one ship more. I have Chorus Aldane's marker now in the deepest vault, beside Esches. 2 of them on black cloth in the cold that does not want to be remembered. The proof renews itself. The lesson renews itself. The keeping renews itself. And I have certified the human entry a 3rd time as folklore with my own true name, because the marker asked me to draw my line and stay behind it and live. And I have made my whole galaxy do the same without its knowing, and I do not know if I am a coward or a keeper, and neither did Senna, and neither did Hollis, and neither will you. Hollis Vane died 11 years later, in her chamber, with her certified hand on the index and her last words spoken into my ear, where the worst of the concordance's truths are kept. She told me the row with no number, though I already knew it. She told me to renew the seal once a generation and never open it, though I had opened it. And then she said one thing more, off the index, that I have never told anyone until this account, which I am sealing now as she sealed hers, for the next reader, whoever and whenever you are. She said, Vale, I have wondered these 11 years whether the humans know we are still keeping it. Whether somewhere in their region, Navigator has a chart with our world on it and a note beside it in their script. Quarantine holding, no further action, the old keepers still teach the young to stay out. I have wondered whether we are a closed case in their archive the way they are, a closed case in ours. And I have decided I hope we are. I hope they have forgotten us as thoroughly as we have forgotten them. Because the only thing worse than being warded by a power that pities you is being watched by one that no longer needs to. Then she died, and I became prime curate, and I have renewed the seal twice in my years, and I have walked past the row with no number 10,000 times and felt the cold and kept walking, the way my whole order has always done, the way I now know my whole galaxy has always done. I do not know if we are right. I want the next reader to understand that, as Senna wanted me to understand it. We are not saints who solved it. We are keepers who chose, and the choice has no bottom. You fall through it for the rest of your life. Every watch, I think, I could unseal it. I could stand before the council and say the humans are real, and human space is real, and the truth of it is being kept from you by your own archive. I could make the galaxy informed, and every watch I see the 17 wrecks drawn whole along their clean arc, and the Verity coming home with a crew that smiled and wept and could not speak, and the worn marker shaped for a stranger's hand, and I renew the seal instead, because an informed galaxy is a galaxy that goes to the arc, and a galaxy that goes to the arc comes home unable to say why it should not have. And then there is no one left to keep the door, because the keepers have become the warning, one silent crew at a time until the index is nothing but holes. The quiet is still in our sky. I have looked at it many nights from Hollis's window. The stars thin toward the deep arm and the dark grows darker, and there is a region no astronomer charts and no captain surveys and no child asks about, and we call it empty, and it is not empty, and the not knowing is the wall, and the wall is the mercy, and the mercy was given to us by a power that took one ship once and never spoke to us again, and warded the whole galaxy from itself with a tired old marker and a crew that came home loving us too much to tell us why. They were not myths. They were never myths. The founding archivist of the most truthful institution in the deep arm looked at the proof with her own eyes and chose the one lie that would keep her kind alive, and she was right, and being right cost her the only thing an archivist owns, which is a true name on a true record, and she paid it, and I have paid it, and you who read this will pay it too, or you will damn us all by refusing to. I am sealing the case now. I am setting it back in the row with no number, where it has lain since before my clan line learned to grip a stylus, and I am certifying the human entry one last time in my own hand, and adding my name beneath Hollis's, beneath Senna's, 3 keepers across 9,000 years bound by the same false truth and the same true reason. If you have opened this, then the seal has failed again. Or you were meant to find it, or chance did what we have all spent our lives preventing. Listen, as I listened, to the whole of it before you decide. And know that you are not alone with it, because we were not alone with it, because she made certain none of us would be. That is the only gift the keeping gives back. The weight and the reason, and the company of the ones who carried it first. Draw your line, stay behind it, live, and let the children keep their tale.